Then a very warm welcome from my side. First of all, I would like to mention that this session will be recorded. So if you turn on the camera, you will be recorded and seen on the recordings, which we will share later in the Prevent Hub. Please turn off your camera during the presentation later on, and you are welcome to turn them back on in the Q&A session. Please mute yourself whilst you are not speaking, and I also kindly ask you already to share questions if you have them during the presentation, and we will have you in the Q&A session later on. So for today, I'm very happy to have Stephanie on my side, and I will shortly give over to her. But first of all, please let me introduce our agenda for today of this Plastic Credit Subworking Group's webinar. We like to introduce to you, or especially Stephanie, our objectives and what our activities have been in the last year. But then we hand over to Raghav, and he will present his research. We will give him the platform of this webinar and the Prevent Waste Alliance Subworking Group to present his research. I will come later to him again. So please welcome Stephanie as our lead of this topic on plastic credits in the Prevent. And Stephanie, yeah, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Silke, for the introduction, and hi to everyone. It's great to be in a bigger group this time, and there are many familiar names on the list. So hi, everyone, but also new names, which is great, so that we can really also broaden our interactions to a wider stakeholder group. And thanks for joining today. So this plastic credit group really started over 3 years ago. And I think when we first came together, the plastic credit market was still very nascent. I mean, it is still nascent, but it had developed over the time. And I think one of our really early goals was to at least get some minimum alignment and understanding of how we as a mixed group of standard setters, plastic credit projects, plastic credit sellers, sales platforms, and so on, can really help advance the market to really understand where we have common ground, where we have common definitions. And what was developed really then and published in 2024 were the guidelines on minimum requirements for plastic waste recovery and crediting standards. So this publication still stands as this was the work of this group really to come together and say, what should be the minimum basis for any plastic credit being issued? Which are the requirements that we should all adhere to or aspire to, even though maybe not all players are there yet? So this is a set of 13 minimum requirements, and we can also link it in the group if you're not yet familiar with it. So this was really just to establish, let's say, the baseline on what this whole industry could agree together. Now, what we're now looking at, and we have spent a lot of time last year in a smaller group, is to, oh, Silke, we can see your calendar. Okay, we're back on the slide. So what this group now has been done in a smaller setting last year is really to understand all the different views, perspectives, and concerns around plastic credit last year. So there had been a number of publications and articles, and we interviewed a number of external stakeholders to really understand how can plastic credits evolve from a really minimum bare requirement to ideally a high integrity. So we have been looking at the carbon market and biodiversity credits. And there is such a thing like the High Integrity Council or High Integrity Principles. Now, this is something that we as a group would also like to develop too. It needs some external support because it can't be the industry ourselves that we regulate ourselves, basically. So also, if anyone is on the call who would like to support such a development, please reach out to Silke, myself, or the rest of the core group to really see how we can move from minimum to really high integrity, what are the principles, and how can a basically neutral body can be formed that acts as a high integrity council. So that's actually what we would love to work on. But again, we would need some support from the external world, the financial industry, or big companies, or multilaterals, or other organizations that would like to support this progress. So that's a little bit what this group had been working on. So really happy to open this core group to a wider audience. So that's a little bit of the promotional text here. Please reach out to us if you would like to be part of the journey towards high integrity. If we go to the next slide, please, Silke. Yeah, just a small recap, and I think all of you that join have a minimum understanding of plastic credits. If not, then please do reach out for us. We also have some previous webinar published in the Prevent Hub about really what are plastic credits and how can they be helpful. This is just a really quick recap of the opportunities of plastic credits. So they are a financing option that is available today, basically. Only under our standard, the plastic pollution reduction standard from PCX Solutions, we have 250 million kg of capacity of cleanup and processing that can be basically deployed today. And it doesn't need to wait for a huge complicated financing mechanism that everyone agrees on, but they are readily available, and companies or other stakeholders can support the waste management industry, especially in developing countries where there is the biggest funding gap. So there is availability of plastic credits today. Plastic credits can have an immediate impact, as I mentioned, through collection and processing, but they also sort of change the unique economics of plastic, because the companies buying the credits would need to add this cost to low virgin plastic prices, and thereby you reduce also the price gap to recycled content. So internally, you can also make the case then to shift to alternative materials or recycled content. And then plastic credits can also be embedded in outcome-based bond, which has been demonstrated with a bond that was launched 2 years ago with two Vera projects facilitated by World Bank and Citi. So that's also a great way to channel funding to waste management. There are different attempts now to use plastic credits or similar outcome-based financing mechanism to really close upstream gaps. So there was work been done by Vera together with other partners on refill. So there has been some consultation last year during Geneva INC 5.2, was it? Yes. And we also are working as PCX Solution on an alternative material certificate, which will be launched shortly. So really to see how upstream reduction or avoidance can be incentivated. And then lastly, which is an area that also we as a core group are really working closely with, and there is a lot of collaboration opportunities with the EPR working group under the Prevent as well, is how plastic credits can be embedded in EPR schemes. They can serve as a transition mechanism towards EPR, but they can also be fully embedded as one means of compliance in EPR schemes, especially in developing countries or the global south. And we are very involved in the Philippine EPR legislation, where plastic credits play a very active role. And I think there is also the idea to at least take inspiration from that model to other countries. So that's been something that we as a group have been working on quite a bit. And again, also here, the invitation to the rest of the group to join us to understand how this logic can be applied, so that they are one element of an EPR design. And I know this was a lot of information in very short time, and I know all of you have a different level of understanding, but I hope that that was helpful. Now, this plastic credit group we had over 100 members that were actually indicating interest in plastic credit, which is really great. What we would like to do now is just get a sense of those people on the call today. What are the topics that you are all most interested in when it comes to plastic credit? So, Silke, I don't know if you managed to set up a poll for us. We have basically 5 categories. You can also text in the chat if you have other topics you would be interested in that we didn't capture in those 5. But basically the idea was topic of interest, would it be around integrity and credibility, or would it be around the limitations of the use of plastic credits, number 2. Then we have number 3, the social and environmental and ethical concerns around plastic credits. 4 would be market viability and demand, which is an interesting one as well. And then lastly, it's about policy and regulatory compatibility. So these are the 5s. And yeah, Silke, do we have a poll?
Yes, we have a
I
poll
can't see you.
in our chat. So you can vote on those topics. You can double or even click all topics on so that we get a good representation of the topics of your interest. So we give you a couple minutes to vote for your topics of interest, and then we will proceed. Can you see this, Stephanie? The bot?
My chat, unfortunately, is not loading. Somehow it says chat is turned off for this meeting, but I don't know if it's my settings or the problem for everyone.
Okay, that's unfortunate. So we lose a couple voices, I guess, then.
But can we maybe check with someone else on the line? Do you see the poll? Raghav, you
Yes,
see it?
I can see it, and there are already some votes.
Perfect. Okay, then it's just me. Then it's fine.
Hopefully, but you will get the opportunity later, Stephanie, to give your vote.
Okay, perfect. Then I think that's really it from our end, Silke, unless I forgot anything. So really looking forward to your opinions, to your participation. Reach out to us if you would like to join us in a more regular meeting. I'm not sure, it won't be monthly. We did monthly before, but I guess we do maybe every 2 months or every 3 months, once a quarter. And really would like to have a broader participation than in this journey. And we're also looking for new topics that you would like to share, present, or get feedback from the group on. So please do reach out to us for any interest in active participation in this group.
Thank you very much, Stephanie.
That's it from me, and back to you, Silke.
Maybe then I take over this and announce the Prevent is at IFAD in a couple of weeks already. Tuesday on 5th of May, there will be a finance session moderated by Stephanie. There will be many colleagues and members from the Prevent present their approaches. But also on Tuesday, the 5th of May, there is a get-together of the Prevent. And please come over, join us. If you need a ticket, write an email to Annika. That is definitely available. We can provide free tickets for you. And we are very much looking forward to meet you there, exchange, and just have a beer and a pretzel and enjoy the atmosphere. So this is our announcement for today. And now I'm honored to give the floor to Raghav. Raghav is an international climate protection fellow under the Alexander of Humboldt Stiftung. He's hosted at the Wuppertal Institute currently. His research has a specific focus on including plastic credits under the Global Plastic Treaty and the Paris Agreement, Article 6. He has worked on financing the collection and recycling of plastics, renewable clean energy technologies, as a technical consultant in the carbon market space. And his prior work experience involved business development and implementing projects on waste management, education, and WASH, among others. He was approaching the Prevent and the sub-working group on plastic credits, and we want to give him the floor to present his research and his outcomes. And please, Raghav, the floor is yours. I will end the presentation. So, and you can now please share yours.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Stephanie and Silke. Please let me know if you guys can see my screen and if everything is in order.
It works fine. Thank you.
Right. Sorry. Yeah, going back to this. So thank you, team, for the opportunity of this presentation. So as Dr. Magelski already introduced me, I'm Humboldt Fellow currently, and my objective was to understand how do plastic credits figure under the various multilateral institutions such as the Global Plastics Treaty, the Paris Agreement Article 6. And my second research question was to understand what do global North or EU-based or USA-based purchasers of these attributes perceive plastic credits as, and what are the interests or what are the incentives and what are the disincentives to look at these instruments or to choose to invest in them. I already come from the supply side. I've seen how these projects work. I truly believe in this tool. However, as a Humboldt Fellow, as an independent researcher, I now approach this research piece or this research project as an independent external researcher. That is, I do not I approach this from a neutral perspective, and I do not have any vested interest in promoting or not promoting any particular policy or technology piece. So there are certain guardrails and certain disclosures that I wish to present to you that I experienced over the past 1 year. My respondents were usually expert respondents, and I had very limited inputs or very limited responses to my surveys and to my questions. However, these expert respondents were representing annual revenues from these plastic companies, which were usually greater than 55 or 60 billion euros per year. So even if only one or two companies chose to respond, the collective market capitalization or the collective influence of these organizations sort of justify. So even if, like, for example, one chemical company chose to answer, it's still a big, substantial institution presenting its opinions. These are also a very interesting times. Last year, the Paris Agreement methodology processes started rolling out. A few methodologies were accepted, and they're currently being debated. So there's frequent changes and frequent updates coming in as we speak. So there are certain things that I've had to start over from again as well. And I'm very pleased to submit to you that certain new opportunities also arose in the course of my research, which may be of interest to actors in the plastic space or actors in the climate finance space. So moving on. So to the buyers of plastic credits, the three main questions that I posed to them, upon which I would triangulate by asking them different aspects of the same question, was to, how would you rate your interest in plastic credits? If you chose to invest, with the traceability and transparency of these projects that they offer, which is for which the bar is very high, thanks to standards such as Vera, PCX, and BVRIO and other such standard setters, does that meaningfully add to your interest in purchasing these credits? And what details would be required to enable greater quote unquote trust in this instrument? Like, what would you like if I were to give you a certain set of indicators or pointers or invoices, what do you need to see to believe in this instrument, to have the integrity or to have the trust in this instrument? So these conversations happened over the course of a year. Many experts, many sustainability team officers, many people gave me their valuable time. This is the first set of findings that I had. Currently, as on date, the way that voluntary market-based plastic credits are positioned, they are not necessarily seen as the highest priority, highest priority investment. And the experts told me that they are currently, while they're very curious, while they're very interested, they're currently on wait and watch mode because they would like to have clear regulatory push or before choosing to invest in these. And all these companies are anyways already participating in EPR-based initiatives. So for them to also invest in plastic credits, while they can, they would like to see that there is a clear regulatory push and a clear market-based demand before they choose to invest in these projects. And while they were interested, they knew the concept, they were proponents of it. They necessarily did not want to be the first people to invest in these. I also interacted with members of institutions such as the American Chemistry Council and Plastics Europe and other institutions who again mentioned that we are proponents of plastic credits. However, we are also facing issues with whether these are actually in demand, do they have any value, or similar issues which prevented them from wholeheartedly investing in these, but they were proponents of it, and they confirmed that we are interested in this attribute. With my interactions with European academia, I encountered unanimously stiff opposition to any voluntary exchange-based mechanism such as the plastic credit. However, the same academics were also very clear proponents of EPR-based financing. So they were like, we should always focus on EPR, and whatever way EPR may be designed and implemented in Europe and in other global south countries such as India, Vietnam, Philippines, etc. But it will always, the primary avenue should be EPR, upon which any other attribute may be based or embedded or included. However, when I sort of mentioned that this is what plastic credits can do, this is what I've seen them do because I used to work on these projects, they heard me, then their perceptions changed a little. They heard me out. However, if presented as an objective question, academics were strongly against this concept. They were saying that this is a potential tool to greenwash by the fossil fuel lobby. And actors such as American Chemistry Council and the circular economy teams of institutions such as BASF, INEOS, others, while on the other hand, were interested in this tool, but they were saying that, hey, listen, if we choose to invest, then we get accused of greenwashing. However, these are the only instruments that we know that are actually working and are actually directing financing to where it's required. So there is this big gap between, say, for example, institutions such as the Scientist Coalition and institutions such as, ACC and other Plastic Europe and other similar institutions as to what these instruments are meant to do and how are they designed and what are the guardrails. A common refrain that I received from uh, the Scientist Coalition was that waste management jobs should be formalized, they should not be informal jobs. However, coming from that perspective where I know that in India, waste management or informal waste work is often the easiest work that people can get when they don't have education or when they don't have the privileges that other people take for granted. So this was another point that I had to explain to European academics that waste work is often the most easily accessible work. So when you choose to invest in plastic credits and these plastic credit-based projects or EPR-based projects, finance waste management projects on the ground, these people tend to benefit. Moving on. So that was my first question as to understand how do these plastic credits are perceived by European buyers and by European academics. And like I mentioned, while the buyers are currently on wait and watch mode, academics are staunchly not proponents of plastic credits, voluntary market-based credits, but uh, they have the same enthusiasm for EPR as that they don't have for plastic credits. So there is a there is much work to be done with academics to sort of get them to understand what these projects do and explore opportunities of collaboration with willing purchasers or willing investors. And this is how I come to now my second research question, that if uh, so this is what the voluntary markets do, but what can Paris Agreement Article 6 offer, and what can the Global Plastics Treaty offer for any interaction with plastic credits? So this is so while my the the relatively negative news of perceptions is concluded, on a more positive news, I encountered several opportunities wherein under the Paris Agreement Article 6 or the Paris Agreement rating mechanism, there's a couple of new opportunities that arise. So, as a limited primer, since we're all aware of what plastic credits do, I will now shed some light on what the Paris Agreement is. There's three distinct mechanisms that the Paris Agreement is currently working on. One, and this is a revamp or a rehash with much improved guardrails, much more improved integrity, much more stringent requirements from the old clean development mechanism era, the CDM era. So this is a much more higher bar, much more higher, much more precise requirement. And I've been closely following how can methodologies of plastic credits that already exist under CDM be included. So there's three distinct planks, three distinct opportunities. One is Article 6.2, which is a government to government sale of carbon and related attributes certificates. And these count towards each country's NDCs, the nationally determined contributions. So they're accounted for. And double accounting is strictly forbidden. And there are various guardrails put in place to ensure that corresponding adjustments are made and that the same credit or the same project is not counted twice. However, for voluntary carbon market actors, there are two more important mechanisms. One is Article 6.4, which is essentially the CDM era rules being updated for the modern times. So this is a more of a private entity to private entity international exchange of climate finance for certain emission reductions, however you choose to define those emission reductions. And under Article 6.8, which is a very new avenue that I've currently been exploring, which is a non-market approaches. In this specific case, exactly to prevent greenwashing, there is no exchange of certificates. This is a much more well understood mechanism wherein a interested party may choose to direct climate finance to a host country under more of a grant agreement with no exchange or no return of or no expectation of any attribute in return. So, for example, if I take a rich, wealthy country and they wish to invest in, for example, a global south country for a waste management project, they can legitimately use Article 6.8, but they will not get any certificates in return. And it's been defined as a non-market approach. So there's no exchange. And this is where also concerns of greenwashing are subsumed, because primarily these are meant to bolster existing regulations such as EPR. So this is where I see a substantial opportunity of both study and consideration for any climate finance instrument. However, since I specifically work with plastic, this is what, if the EPR law is meant for plastic or for waste management, I see a very strong opportunity here. So moving on, so like I mentioned, it's a rehash of the CDM era 2.0. The methodologies are existing. There are two distinct CDM methodologies that are essentially precursors of the more modern Vera plastic credit exchange, BVREO voluntary standards and methodologies. So under the CDM standard, there were two methodologies that I discovered. One was AMS3AJ, recovery and recycling of materials from solid waste, and AMS3BA, recovery and recycling of materials from e-waste, both of which cover plastic and informal collection and were essentially precursors to the modern standards, like I mentioned earlier. So these two methodologies can get included into the Article 6.4 mechanism. And there are since last year, under the SB62, under COP 29 and COP 30, these methodologies are now the methodological expert panel is convening, and they are now inviting and incorporating methodological suggestions that, hey, listen, I think these methodologies need consideration, and there is a very well laid out process, and we are currently seeing the first crop of high priority methodologies such as renewable energy and green ammonia and other such things currently being accepted and rolled out. These are UN processes, so there's no cost or no money is being exchanged to list these methodologies. However, there are clear guidelines and performers and documentation that needs to be subscribed to in order to submit a methodology. However, I'm saying that for any institution that may want to, they can. My question is not should the Prevent Alliance members do this, do and take any particular action. My role as an external researcher is simply to see, can this be done? Yes, it can be. Should it be done? That is outside my purview. However, there are clear opportunities and clear guidelines laid out that plastic credit, what we perceive as modern plastic credit methodologies, they can get incorporated. There's a very well laid out plan. And this time, they because of very high public participation, public call for consultations and inputs, it is a clearly laid out plan or a clearly laid out mechanism. And it is I'm very interested to see how we can include plastic credits or any similar novel attribute into these methodological processes. However, in my interaction with experts in this domain, uh, there were certain experts who mentioned that, like, especially for something like plastic, the baseline and permanence requirements will be tricky, and they will be very carefully need to be articulated. Otherwise, it'll not lead to the outcomes that are needed. And with the carbon markets, with CDM era rules and the Paris Agreement, it is the conservative values that we take. And there are various guardrails and processes that are currently being baked in into the methodological submission process to ensure that the integrity level is very high. So in case the Prevent Alliance is interested in integrity or of these credits, they can also look at the bar that the Article 6.4 methodological expert panel has laid out. So that is one more opportunity. There, as with any opportunity, there are certain pros and certain cons. This is my limited understanding based on my interactions with experts and my own research, that since there's an exchange of certificates, it is perceived as a tool for greenwashing. However, this time under the Paris Agreement, they are trying to raise the ambition and the bar for integrity to be very high. So that presents an interesting opportunity. Like I mentioned, baselines, permanence, additionality may be tricky to demonstrate. However, it depends on the specific kind of process and the specific kind of project that is trying to get self-listed. So this is again an interesting opportunity. This essentially the CDM era rules. So people who are familiar with interacting with the Vera registry or with the PCX registry, they will find this process to be relatively similar or to be much more closely related. One common issue that I did face was credits and certificates tend to displace EPR. This is a common issue that we've all heard and discussed. However, I'm presenting it up front and center so that people are aware of it, and we can design policies and instruments to not be seen, so that EPR and plastic credits are not seen at odds with each other, but rather complementing each other. So you may have a proper EPR law for a specific type of plastic or a specific type of polymer, and what that EPR is not able to cover, maybe plastic credits can then be brought in. And how plastic credits are defined under each national or subnational jurisdiction will also need to be seen. In my interaction with experts who have studied India and Philippines, plastic credits, the way the Indian government is defining, is not the voluntary certificates. They are essentially calling EPR certificates as plastic credits, which is not the same thing. However, in Philippines, and I'm sure there are more qualified experts to talk about this, the Philippine government is sort of seeing them in a different light. So I also look forward to discussing those the way people define these credits, or the different governments define these credits and what they're meant to do. So that. Next, under Article 6.8, this is a more recent opportunity that I'm currently exploring. So as I was speaking with experts from Perspective Climate Group, they mentioned, so the first thing I told them was, when I approached them, that I work on plastic credits. I've worked on these projects as a technical consultant before the Humboldt Fellowship. And a common issue that I constantly face is that academics and activists and well-wishers are afraid of greenwashing, or are afraid that these credits are used to not direct financing where they're supposed to go. So the expert respondent mentioned that there's one more opportunity called Article 6.8, non-market approaches, wherein uh, wherein the grant money between two governments, uh, and it does not need to be a global north country and a global south country, as I will explain in the subsequent project examples. It can be different countries within the same uh, socioeconomic condition. But the point is that there needs to be two different countries involved, with a private entity in the middle that can focus on capacity building, technology transfer, and financial transfer. So this is a much more straightforward grant mechanism. For example, the as a Humboldt Fellow, we were told about the IKI small and large grants. So this is similar, that like one country can choose to direct climate financing into a host country, provided a set of projects and a set of policy measures are implemented and need financing to operationalize them. Some opportunities that I see with Article 6.8 is, it's a little known, little used tool. And so it is used primarily in Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. And there are countries such as Canada, Japan, and other countries who are investing in these projects. Uh, these present interesting opportunities because the way I see, if something is little known or not understood, that means I get excited because I see that as a frontier. And in the frontier, you can make up your own research questions, or you can make up your own rules, and then someone can come and correct you. But in the absence of any established path, you can forge your own path. So especially for the projects that are currently listed, uh, it is interesting to see that most of them tend to cover EPR in some way or the other, EPR and waste management. So there are currently three projects with international cooperation under Article 6.8 mentioned. So those are, they're hosted in Chile, they're hosted in Nepal, Philippines, Cambodia, Vietnam, and of course, uh, between African countries themselves. You will notice that under the donor countries, under the adaptation-based benefits mechanism in the last one, there is no global north country. These countries are supporting each other, which is also under the African Development Bank and similar multilateral financing institutions or development financial banks. They are specifically bolstering the implementation and rollout of EPR-based collection and EPR-based project design. So this, for from my limited perspective, or from my perspective, solves two different problems with the same instrument. Namely, there is no risk of greenwashing, because by rule, by design, by definition, there is no corresponding adjustment or exchange of certificates. If for example, under the first example, when Canada chose to invest in Chile, Chile did not give any certificate or any attribute to Canada. It was a straight climate finance transfer. And under the Japanese Subaru initiative, Japan has a elaborate set of Japanese institutions supporting these countries with project financing, with startups, deploying their prototypes or their products into these countries in coordination with local governments, under the supervision of the UN Habitat Regional Office there. And this sort of presents some interesting opportunities for any private participant or consultant to empanel themselves on the Article 6.8 mechanism, because that is free to do, and it may sort of If for example, if I had the necessary resources or the necessary networks, I would register myself so that I can facilitate these climate financial transfers from a country willing to invest and a country which needs investments, and sort of start designing and rolling out projects. Which I found that this might be a viable mechanism for organizations who have a global footprint or work in closely with governments and with informal waste networks. I see this as a substantial opportunity. However, even with Article 6.8, there are issues that can be seen. There's a limited set of countries who are choosing to use this mechanism. It's relatively underutilized, which is both an opportunity and a constraint. However, something that I found that I was not very enamored by was that this mechanism may also be used, if one is not careful, to export inappropriate technologies. For example, under the Japan-based Subaru project, I found that they were exporting waste to energy incinerator plants to countries like Philippines and Vietnam, where the waste profile tends to be very different. I can understand that in Japan, incineration is very common. Their waste profile is mostly dry and mostly plastic, so it has a high calorific value, and they have sufficient environmental standards and safeguards to make sure that the emissions are not too high. However, if you directly were to export this technology to a country like India or Vietnam, where the waste profile tends to be more wet, this may create issues of inappropriateness. So to close the loop, I set out to understand how a plastic credits positioned, how are they perceived, and do they have a space under UN multilateral treaties such as the Paris Agreement and the Global Plastics Treaty. Uh, at least for the Paris Agreement and Global Plastics Treaty, I do see a space. It is possible. It can be done. Should it be done? That is beyond my question. In terms of perceptions, currently it's on and watch mode. I do not foresee, and the people I spoke with also do not foresee any major movements despite multiple pushes. So conclusion and way forward, I think Article 6.4 and Article 6.8, the market-based approaches and the non-market-based approaches, they are a substantial opportunity, because then you become part of a UN process. The bar is very high. It has a perception of a high integrity that is baked in. Since it's a UN multilateral process, the bar for integrity is very high. There's multiple checks and balances. So that may be an important opportunity. However, now my thesis is also sort of updated. Now I know that it is EPR, that is extended producer responsibility. That is the basic infrastructure upon which any intervention may be designed. However, in every jurisdiction should focus on implementing and rolling out EPR and holding the producers responsible and letting them sort of finance this. I would like to conclude by thanking all the people who went out of their way to help me out. All the colleagues with Wuppertal Institute and all the people from the Prevent Alliance and Plastics Europe and Perspectives in Green Forest and Vera and PCX. I'm very grateful for this night. Thank you. This concludes my presentation, and I look forward to taking questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this dense presentation and your findings from your research, Raghav. And for this time, there are no questions in the chat, but please raise your hand if you have questions or also feedback to Raghav, and we are happy to take you. Ina, the first question is for you. Or it's not
hello.
for you, it's on you.
Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me fine. Yeah, okay, perfect.
Yes.
Because my chat has stopped working as well, so I had to go this way. Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, as Silke said, so quite dense, quite a lot of information. I'm particularly curious about one point. Could you bring one example how 6.8 could be operationalized? Not asking if it should be, but really how would it work in practice? Could you give an example and walk us through? Because it is, I think, the most abstract, because 6.2 and 6.4 are still market mechanisms, where 6.8 is a non-market mechanism. So this is, as you said, the least used, and I think maybe many people on the call are not that familiar with Paris Agreement Article 6.8. So I'd be quite curious and I wonder if you could expand a little bit on how that would look like in practice. Thank you.
All right, so I'll just quickly go back to my presentation. Please do excuse the density of the slide deck. Let me just quickly share my screen again. I have one slide that I was hoping to show. So let's imagine. So this is a completely theoretical, hypothetical world. So let's imagine that the host country of Togo has a requirement of managing plastic waste, and there is a donor country in UAE. Just randomly, I've mentioned these countries who sort of be able to finance plastic waste management EPR-based projects, and a private consulting firm or a team or an institution which can act as as a support mechanism to connect these two governments. And in our hypothetical case, it's going to be a EPR-based project. So, for example, if XYZ Consulting works with the government of Togo, with the government machinery, the NMA, with the National Nodal Authority for these projects, they can prepare a set of documents and then they can host themselves. The NMA website on the UNFCCC is essentially a matchmaking service. So if XYZ Consulting supports the Togolese government in setting up the project documentation, they can then host it on the UNFCCC Article 6.8 non-market approach website after checking this checklist about what a non-market approach is supposed to be, how those projects are designed, etc. And then they upload the design project here. And then if UAE chooses to accept, then they can straight away finance this project. While Perspectives Climate Group has rolled out these projects, UN Habitat and Arcadis here and there, I am only able to tell you based on what I can study and what I can gauge. However, based on my limited understanding, this was the framework followed, that the UAE government under FACE would then accept the proposal, choose to invest a certain amount, and roll out these projects. And then the projects can then get implemented within the host country. The host institution such as XYZ Consulting or the Togolese government can monitor, accounted for their NDC. However, and they can also have these projects certified. However, no certificate will be sold, or there will not be any exchange of certificates for the climate finance. However, any delta or any emission reduction, any monitoring mechanism may be installed and may be used to monitor these projects. And based on my research, there's a couple of ready-made examples already that are rolled out. These examples of projects. So this is one prospective mechanism that I can mention quickly. That this mechanism, this is how it may get operationalized, assuming that an actor or a set of actors can coordinate between a host country and a donor country and roll out a set of projects. It'll be even more helpful if these are. Can you see my screen? Is this UNFCCC website visible? Adaptation-based mechanism, is this visible?
Yes, we can see your slide still.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, no, just sorry, let me just share my entire
But
screen.
please, Raghav, please don't move too fast with your head. The tone is very difficult. It's breaking sometimes. Please stay in one position.
All right, thank you. I'll be mindful of that. So, like I mentioned, there are these are three examples that are mentioned and listed at the website, wherein there's a host party, there's a submitting party, and a party. So this is one more, what do you call, perspective, or one more opportunity that can be sort of looked at. These are all projects which are focused on emission reduction from the waste sector. So in this specific case, this covers organic waste. Chile is the host country. They sought the investment. Canada is the donor country. They gave the initial investment. And there are clear guide rails and clear guidelines as to how this, how there is no what you call exchange of, for example.
But to which NDC
Not
does
all
it
the
count? To Canada or to Chile? I think that is the question. So who gets the agriculture? Chile, the receiving country, not the donor country.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, so I will stop sharing my screen. Is there any other question?
We have in the chat, there is, and maybe Stephanie or even Ina or Jonas, I see in the call, there's a question from Gloria on the UN Global Plastic Treaty, if this is stalled. And what is your opinion?
I do have an opinion for that if the question is directed at me.
Yes, please go on.
Yeah, so I was there for INC 5.3. They elected a new president, and the new the Ecuadorian president is very much interested in pushing for a acceptable global plastics treaty. However, given the very the March and April issues with the US and the US attack and blockade on Iran and other such issues, that might not be happening anytime soon. Uh, the binding requirements of fossil fuel cuts and the binding requirements for plastic production, there is no headway, and there is no like between the observers and my conversation, there is no current headway being made unless something changes in the future. They are expecting that INC 5.4 and 5, there may be one more required, but they're not expecting any progress to be made for in the near term, at least for the next 1 or 2 years. I will not be hopeful about an acceptable binding fossil fuel reduction based treaty. No. Hilariously, the US, Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, Iran, India, they're all on the same side, and they do not want binding production cuts because they said that our economies are dependent on fossil fuel production and polymer product, the distillates thereof. Yeah, thank you.
I don't know if Jonas has a different view on it. Otherwise, there is a question just about your research, if you have all summed up in an article already, and if you can share the link, please.
Yes, I will do that. I'm currently drafting my findings into an article. I will just request a little bit more time, but as soon as it's done, I will share it across. However, I've noted down this question as well.
Thank you. We can share this then also with you. If you provide a link to us, we can share this in the prevent.
Absolutely.
So there is, Gloria, do you want to open your mic, or shall I just read the question? You can also raise or open the mic and ask yourself.
Yeah, sorry about that. So
no, welcome.
Yeah, just a follow up, because we're doing a lot of applications for accelerators and grant funding, et cetera, and we think it's important to mention policy, which is why I'm really grateful for all your time today. But one of the things I started to do is maybe pull back on how often I was mentioning Inc. 5, because it just didn't seem like it was getting a lot of headway, and I didn't know that I didn't think it was going to be as impactful as maybe mentioning some of these other treaties and mandates like the Paris Agreement or 30 by 30, BBNJ, et cetera. But I am hoping that there is movement on it, but it just seems like in the last at least year, there hasn't been anything really substantially going on with it.
Yeah, I agree with you here. Because the Paris Agreement is making more headway, there's more opportunities, and it is directly talking about the relaunch of the revamp higher integrity, higher bar climate finance mechanisms. They are gaining more traction. It's moving a little bit faster. And if I were a betting man, or if I were an investor, or if I was not an independent researcher, I would focus more on the Paris Agreement rather than any other mechanism, because that offers much more substantive gains in the near term rather than other projects. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Gloria, for your comment and your unfortunate observation. Ina.
I just quickly wanted to add, I mean, banking on the Paris Agreement and it being quicker, I just wanted to say it took the Paris Agreement 9 years since the adoption to get to Article 6. So while I agree it is not now there, it took 9 years since the adoption to actually have this Article 6 hurdle being taken. So, and still I think there's a lot of questions to be answered if there's a willingness to now sector a branch into plastics. But I'm always happy to see that someone is looking into it. Thank you.
Thanks,
So
Ina.
Venan
Yeah,
Sondo,
exactly, please. Venan, would you like to open your mic? Otherwise, I read the question.
I can't open my mic.
Thanks.
yeah, so
You
Venan
can't.
Sondo,
Okay.
no problem.
Oh, yeah, it's open now. Sorry. Yeah, I thought I couldn't. Sorry. Thanks for the very elaborate presentation. Just a quick one. So from what I'm understanding, if a country has plastic credits as one of its NDC activities, then it could be possible to claim carbon credit from plastic waste via the Paris Treaty. Is that what I'm understanding?
It is possible. However, this is with the caveats. There's a whole bunch of processes that need to happen beforehand. Primarily, the one that is most important is the methodology for such a project needs to be approved and passed by the methodological expert panel before any crediting mechanism can claim. There will also be requirements that the methodology have appropriate baselines, permanence, and appropriate guardrails that all methodologies need to have, and it will go through the scrutiny process. Then the individual countries, also Annex 1 countries and other countries, also need to have waste under the projects that they're willing to invest and seek investment from. Yeah, please go ahead, Venan.
Okay, there is this pending methodology for carbon credits from plastic waste avoided. Do you have any status on that? Has it been approved, or is this still pending approval?
I haven't seen this. Could you refer exactly which methodology?
I don't know the methodology. I can find it. I can send it to you. It's basically if you can prove that whatever you are producing is going to replace the use of single-use plastics.
Then I would say relatively higher likelihood, yes. Assuming that the methodological expert panel accepts and approves of the methodology, yes, it is possible, and this holds true for different types of attributes like renewables, plastics, nature-based solutions, and alternative materials, and what have you.
Thank you, Raghav. So we have the last minute, and I thank everyone for participation. We will share the recording as well as the presentation in the hub. If you have any questions or you want to contribute to this working group, please contact me. We are very much looking forward for further discussion, further presentation, and your contributions. Thank you very, very much. Thanks for posting the email address, Stephanie. And I hope I see, or we will see a lot of you in Munich at IFAD. And if you need a ticket, Annika already posted her email address in the chat. Please reach out.
I've also posted mine. This will be the email address that I'll always be available at. I'm also on LinkedIn. And I am extremely grateful for this opportunity. Thank you, everybody here who has helped me and given me this opportunity. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon, evening, or whole day. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you. Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.